First. Hi everyone, I'm Kristine Ballard.
And I'm Melony Smirniotis.
And welcome to Art and Up. This is the place where creatives connect, cultivate and support each other's creative journey. And today we are talking to the creative, energetic, out in the dirt, often painting,
Jan Cristaudo. Welcome, Jan.
Hi Jan.
Thank you. Thank you. It's good to be here and seeing your lovely faces.
Jan, so could I fairly say that you're an abstract expressionist specialising in landscape painting?
Yes. Yeah.
Australian abstract expressionist, because the Australian
at the moment, yes.
Well, lockdown, right?
Yep.
Made it out there.
Yeah. So were you always a creative person, Jan, way back when you were a little Jan?
Yeah, I was actually. When I think back, I just loved to paint and draw, always outside that line that I was always getting into trouble for, because draw within the line, colour within the line. So, yes, I guess I could say definitely I was creative.
And when you were at school, did you pick up the arts in school when you were there, or did you really keep that at home?
No, I did any art sort of course or thing that was going. And in my last 2 years at school, we had an amazing art teacher, and Ali Denlo, her name was, and she was from, Ceylon then, Sri Lanka now, but she was just fabulous and just opened all our eyes to a whole different way of looking at art. So I have to thank her for that too.
That's nice to give your teacher a shout out, because we often forget the influential people in our lives that get us from A to B or A to Z, really.
Definitely.
When did you know, Jan, that this was it? You wanted to take on art as a full-time career?
Oh, I guess when I was in high school, I thought commercial art, because I didn't have that concept of as an artist as such, because you have to remember, I was at school in the dim dark ages and there was no support or advice given. You're either academic, you did language and then you went to university, or you were a nurse or a secretary or teaching. And so I thought, commercial art would be good.
It's a real job, isn't it?
Sorry?
It's considered a real job,
Absolutely. And I knew I had to earn some money somehow. Yeah. So I guess that's where my thoughts started.
Right. So when did you then decide, in your period of being in creative arts, but not really being in expressive arts, I'll define it like that. When did you say, I'm going to really give this a go, when I really want to be an expressive artist?
I guess when my kids were at high school and I had that time to really put in and be able to do it. And I started with a colour and design course for 3 years, having no idea the amount of homework you had to do. I mean, it was full on. But I just loved it, and I didn't really know where it was going to take me. I always still worked in abstract. And then when I finished that, I started to follow artists that inspired me and did workshops with them. Some I was with for 2 or 3 years, and then moved on to the next person that I thought could push me a bit further. So, yeah.
I think that's a challenge with workshops too, isn't it? Because you want to learn how to do it and you want to learn to experiment, but there's a point in a shift. And I think that's that professionalism where you go, well, I really admire what they do, but I need to create my own voice. And that's when it gets really hard. But you know that you want to stop copying other people, or
absolutely,
I don't want to be mistaken for someone else. And
I know, and and you can't help it, because I know sometimes when people come to my workshops, you can't help but take on what you're being shown, and then it starts to filter through, and no one ever paints exactly like somebody else, but that's when you've got to step aside and make it your own, put your own mark on it. So
I think, Jan, as well, I know, having taught workshops myself and watching people's journeys, throughout the workshop, you do get to a point in your creative career, I think we've talked about this before, where the penny drops and you think, I really feel my style is moving away from these workshops and I'm developing my own. So yeah, I can definitely relate. But I know that plein air painting is really important for you. You immerse yourself in the landscape. I know that's first and foremost, which is not often offered in a workshop environment.
No.
So tell us about where you make your art.
I make my art, I guess, in my head to start with. You know, I'm starting to think about where I'm going. Just recently having a trip to the outback. You know, I'm thinking of those places that I'm going to and want to return to and really sit in that moment. So, you know, it's already triggered something. And then I guess sitting in that landscape, painting, I carry very little materials because it's a little bit remote. And just with gouache in a book on the ground and then coming back into the studio and building them up from there.
And that is why it's really hard to get a picture of Jan, because she's in the dirt.
I'm always with the hat and looking.
You get a lot of the back of Jan in a cap. She's very incognito. and you can see through your work, Jan, that you're so inspired by being in the space of that landscape. It just lights you up. And I think it's that energy that you experience. And that's the thing, isn't it? Is that experience the landscape. I know, Melony, when you're in the bush, it's like, this is the juice that keeps me alive. And now what do I do with it? Yep. And so it's very difficult to get a headshot of Jan because she's always in the back of a window. And they are, you know, from anyone who's not in Australia, they are monumental patches of dirt, let's say. They're always epic rocks or things like that. And you just mentioned about the materials, and I think it is a real art when you do plein air painting, which we've mentioned before. You do have a separate kit that you use because you can't have a really lovely French easel.
Nothing clean out there.
You can balance on your lap, and I know that you do a lot of really energetic works on paper because they're easy to carry, and a lot of that work has to be able to be rolled up in a backpack, and I'm pretty sure you'd be quite happy to be left there in the dirt.
But it's good for people to know that they're preliminary works as well, and then you're able to return to the studio.
Absolutely.
But there's no misconception that you know, you create these great big paintings, wonderful layers out, you know, battling the elements.
Yes, I wish, but that's
Elizabeth McQuire comments on like trying to capture that creativity when it comes to you. And that's why everyone ends up takes too much stuff out in the outback, you know.
Less is better in any situation.
And you do have to manage what you're going to look at, and this especially so in a very expansive landscape, those landscapes that you go to. What do you go for first? You know, is it the light that captures you, or the color, or the rock, or the textures? You know, I kind of sense you love to get down into texture, so it's like,
I know,
in that dirt and like play with the rocks, which is probably the 6-year-old you too.
I know from being told you can't do that. Now I can do whatever I like.
And so those sort of preliminary things, or those notes, visual note taking or mark making, I think it's then the challenge to capture that and bring it back with you.
I think
and that energy. It. Oh yeah.
Just when you talk about it, you
consume it. The lovely artist Peter Griffin, when I was going out to Arkaroola for the first time, he said to me, "Come, I want to show you something." And he said, and his advice was spot on. It's so huge out there, it's so ancient. You know, don't try and get everything in because you'll do your head in. And he showed me some of his drawings, which were literally like half a dozen lines, but they said it all. And I hold that in my mind when I go out there. Your less is better, and don't overwhelm yourself with it because it's a massive landscape. It's huge.
And it can become overwhelming. And I think that's what the Italians used to do. They would, that's why the Italians in their structure have columns, so that when they look outside, you look through that landscape,
it's
through
like
those columns. It's almost like a frame. And so that gives you something to go with. But unfortunately, Australia there's no frame.
I know, there's nothing out there. It's like those spaces are wonderful. So
let's talk scheduling, because we can't pin this lady down.
Yeah,
it's a miracle that she's even on screen with us right now.
She has got a lovely backdrop, though.
She has a lovely backdrop.
Mind you, this is her backyard, so it's not really that rough everywhere. Amazing part of the world.
Speaking of scheduling, how do you schedule time for your art? I know that's your priority, that and family. So how do you factor all that in? Because I know quite often I try and, we try and work out dates and whatnot, and you're gallivanting around the country.
I guess it's funny because I'm a Virgo. So even though I do these abstract paintings, and for some people they might look like they're all over the place, there is a foundation and a structure to them. And I need that in my own life. So, for example, I can't go down into the studio knowing I've then got to come back, make beds, do a bit of cooking, put some washing on, do a bit of shopping. Everything's got to be out the way. So when I go into that studio, it's wholly and solely about painting. And it's like that for the days, I'll put days aside where that's what I'm going to do. And sort of, it sounds a bit structured, but it's like an appointment. If you've got an appointment like today at 10 o'clock, it's in the diary and that's what you do. And it's how I work a little bit.
Yeah. So how do you keep motivated if you're in, I know that you do a lot of solo shows and you are in a few group shows, and you probably, as you just mentioned, you're scheduled, but there must be times when you go, oh, I'm feeling a bit flat, or, I need to go and visit that rock in the dirt, and you can't get there.
Yes.
Do you have any tips or tricks?
It's a very natural thing. And sometimes I think people think it's unnatural. Like, for example, last year when COVID first hit and it was lockdown, so many artists were, and like myself, I had that flat feeling because everything was so foreign to us. And I remember someone saying, a friend of mine who's an artist, if one more person says to me, oh, you must be painting up a storm at home, I think I'll scream. And I knew exactly what she meant because I didn't have that motivation. It was like we were all on hold, like a holding pattern.
Well, the timelines got taken too, didn't they? They're those things we would work towards. They got taken away.
Absolutely. And I was having an exhibition in October, which very thankfully it went ahead. But prior to that exhibition, because I think it was about 3 or 4 weeks beforehand that I knew, yes, it's on, we're going to be doing it. I was fluffing around and I thought, I really need to get stuck in here because if I do get the go ahead, I won't have any finished work. So that got me going. But in those flat periods, which we all have, I think you just acknowledge it, and you just go with it. You read your art books, you listen to wonderful podcasts and you fuel yourself. So it's no good going into a studio and forcing yourself to paint because nothing's going to happen.
Just make rubbish.
Rubbish.
Listen to art now.
Absolutely. And you fiddle. You fiddle. When I say in my workshops, don't fiddle. If you're going to make a mark, do a really big mark. And,
But isn't that, I think that's a sign of the times. I think we were all, even though a lot of artists, and we've all had this, because you all like hobbits and you're in your studio and you love painting, but there was this sense of distraction, and I can only pin it down to a little bit like when you plan for a holiday, you've got that momentum and, all that work that you do ahead, which is all that preparing for a show or painting for, an end point. You prepare, and then when you get to the holiday, you can relax.
Yeah, but
so
if you're
constantly preparing, and and the rules kept changing all the time.
Yeah, so the holidays being
and it worked out that artists do need those sort of things to work towards in those deadlines. We don't just fluff around and with a paintbrush, and we are quite, like you mentioned, quite orderly and scheduled. Even the work expressive, but all that order around you, when some of those things are taken away, that sort of unplanned, it does sort of shake you a little bit and you can't really settle.
Absolutely. And like writers, you know, you hear writers talking about writer's blocks. You know, same with artists. Sometimes you just, it's just not coming together. But, you know, art isn't just about painting either. It is about educating yourself with all the different exhibitions around, reading about other artists. You know, we all feed off one another, and it's healthy and it's good, and it's what we should be doing. So
give us some insight, Jan, in as far as your approach to social media and self-promotion. Like, what do you feel is most important, especially leading up to a show, or just even keeping a presence online?
Yeah, look, I'm certainly not a clever tech head when it comes to, you know, putting myself out there, but I do what I think works for me, and I don't want to really go down that tunnel of where I'm on the phone all the time and promoting, because I think people it starts with, oh, yeah, Jan Cristaudo exhibition, it goes off their head. So with a show coming up, I plan it, you know, sort of space it out a little bit. I do Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. I do my own advertising in certain magazines that I know that's worked for me, and just try and keep that balance.
I think you create a format then, and if that's got to be enough. You know, we're not
absolutely
now that, you know, because everything's so accessible, we are meant to be, and I come from a graphic design background, we are meant to be all graphic designers and marketing expertise and put that into the work of promoting that. And we get really angry as artists because that's not what we want to spend time on.
No, and especially if you don't have those skills like yourself, you know, I can spend so much time on a computer and, you know, all day, and I've done that much, which you would have done in like a nanosecond, and that's frustrating.
And I think that's part of the management too of now being an artist, is that how do you do that? We've all seen those people who seem to be the rock stars and they seem to have an amazing videos, and I agree with you, Jan. You often forget to take a photo of yourself in the studio because you're too busy doing your stuff. And
I'm in the flow. You're in the flow. You don't want to be taking photos of yourself.
And you know, we're not those maybe one day megastars that have a whole team that
there is a team that
do all that. I mean, that's a big difference, you know.
Is here.
And what?
Myself and I.
So Jen,
I'm lucky. I'm married to Joe, who has a marketing company, so I can always tap into him, but
that doesn't go as fluid as you would like. You know, that the idea of having people on call is an illusion, isn't it? You often have to ask a few times for that to happen.
So but I do work out a little bit of a strategy plan, especially around an exhibition. At certain dates I'm going to release things, or I just do it to the best of my ability, because I figure it's me, and most people know me or of me, so that's how I do it. And there's Jan again, sort of thing. So
it becomes sort of familiar format almost. I mean, you've been doing these for decades, let's say. You know, you've got a format, whether we're in the modern commercial, you know, social media world, or, you know, 10 years ago things were very different, but it's still that structure and that format that you
and I was thinking that last night, because I've just filled out a proposal for a solo exhibition next year, and I'm doing it all online. And you know, I was thinking, gosh, about 15 years ago you'd get the form sent to you, you'd handwrite it, you know, I'd physically take it in to know that it had got there and been received. So yeah, we've come a long way.
I mean, that's good and bad, I think, too. One, you know, you can apply for more things, but two, that communication, which I think in the arts world we really like that communication. It's not just when you have a show, it's talking to the director, it's having a relationship. And sometimes with those now applications online, they're very distant, and it's easy to misread things as well.
Absolutely. Well, I had to make a phone call and ask you know, one of the curators, is this what I do? Does this mean this or does this mean that? And she actually said to me, I've had a few people ring and ask that question. So I thought, oh, that's good.
Yeah. Always on that edge of being yeah, you're not quite sure if it's a stupid question or it's annoying or whether you're upset anyone.
You want to get it right because you don't want to jeopardize your chances or, anyway.
There's a lot of guesswork. But tell us, what's the hardest thing about, the most difficult or challenging thing about being a painter?
Oh, look, I think, well, not just the first time, but each time, just putting yourself out there, especially in an exhibition and a solo exhibition. It's like hanging yourself out there naked and you're going to get all sorts of comments, good, bad, or indifferent. Yes, but it's, it's hard. It's hard to make that first leap of faith, I think, for a lot of people. And when I mentor people and suggest, gently have a small exhibition, and it takes me back to myself. And a friend of mine said to me, right, this is the date. You're having an exhibition up in my vineyard and that's it. And I felt like I'd aged 30 years in one moment and, and the stress and the overall thing. And when I think back to that exhibition, I sort of cringe because I did it all myself and hung it all myself and everything was up close and it was, but
you still have that contact.
It was a stepping stone. And I thank him for it.
Yeah, but I think that's part of being an artist. Like, yes, there's the painting, and I think it's like most small businesses, 50% of the work is you spend just to open the door, to be there. So 50%, that's what we forget, is 50% of being like sort of what we would call a professional artist. And that doesn't mean you're selling millions of things. It means you've decided to make that a priority, and that's what you're going to work at as your, profession, or it's your vocation. And so it's about sorting out your studio, planning to go on a trip, filling out those grants, all that type of thing. And you cannot skip the queue. You have to have done the first show or the first few shows that were uncomfortable and they were all wrong, but that makes you now experience. You can,
and you learn by it.
It makes you human too. If everything went well, then that it just doesn't work like that. And so reviewing all of that and putting yourself in those shoes again helps other people. It makes you accessible as an artist, I think. I mean, that's why we're doing this. It's because we want other people to know that it's really great to have an artistic life. And it's hard, but it's also great and exciting.
Oh, it is. And you're learning all the time. Even though I've got a few solo exhibitions behind me, each one, I start thinking about the next one and, might just tweak that, or
it's
I want to do that again, or so it's good. It's good.
Jen, that brings us to what's the great thing about being a painter?
Oh, just everything. Just everything. I just think I am so very fortunate because, in this time of my life that for a lot of people that have left their careers and they're a little bit lost with what to do, I'm busier now than I ever have been. And, I'm doing something that I love, I'm passionate about, and I wouldn't change it for quids. It's good.
What's your latest news? What's going on? Where can we find you? What's happening in the world of Jan?
Well, I've got the Pittwater Artist Trail coming up very soon, where people go to the studios and follow the artists around. And then I'm now involved with the new gallery, which is very exciting. Lovely to be part of that. And then I'm hopefully having an solo exhibition next year, which I can, I'll work up towards that. So I've got a few works in the studio standing like little soldiers waiting for me to get stuck into them. And the workshops that I run myself. So it's all good, all busy. Looking forward. Always look forward to things. So
you've got a bit of work in a group show at Gallery 1111 at the moment. And
yes, sorry, I should mention that name. Here I'm saying I'm with a new gallery. Sorry.
I know it's good for people to know they can come and check out your work, and that you'll be doing a few workshops here as well, and a few demonstrations leading up to the workshops.
Yes,
yes.
So, yes, they have to just check on my Instagram on that one.
Yeah, and I think Jan's work is an abstract expressionist. So for people who are really fascinated or interested, or even if they don't think they understand abstract art, and I've had this with a few customers that were looking at Jan's work in the past, it's a really exciting journey. And to be able to sort of understand those mark making and how to sort of find ways to read that type of work, which is not clearly obvious. It's not just an apple on a dish.
Yes.
Not that that's bad, but I think that that's part of the exciting journey. And so learning those types of things can just really open up and expand your world as how you view artworks, how you view spaces and shapes for anyone.
Yes,
and that's what
absolutely.
work does.
And
there is you to come in.
Yes,
there is a story always in an abstract piece.
I love your story.
We love this story.
We love the story.
I mean, I think the exciting thing about the abstraction work is that you can also find your own stories in that work, and that's why that type of work has extra lives to it. And that's what makes it, as an artist, if someone finds something different in your work and like, oh, I never thought of it like that, but isn't that exciting? That's how the artworks continue to breathe, and why you would have an artwork on a wall and you keep going back to it, and it's just, I love the way it might remind you of something, or you might find a new story. And I think that a lot of your work, Jan, reminds me of that. It takes us to places we haven't seen before, and I think that's the magic, right? That's the 6-year-old inventiveness we all love.
Yeah. And as an artist, you know, I love it when someone says to me, I see, is that about XYZ?
Yes.
And I think to myself, well, it's not. But then I see what they're seeing, and then I have never seen that, and yet I've painted it. And I think, well, isn't that amazing? And you can have a conversation about it, because I really feel with abstract work, people can find it confronting in a sense that they don't understand it. So they have a block, and sometimes people make silly statements like, oh, you know, my 2-year-old could do it, or that. But no, the 2-year-old can't. But if you can talk them through about what that
and that's
painting is, it makes a huge difference.
It's an invitation to unpack something together, which is a point of connection, which is really lovely.
Interactive. It's an interactive experience, even though it's
and for a lot of people to meet the artist, you know, see the painting, have a connection with the artist. It's like a little triangle. It's lovely.
Well, thank you so much for today.
Thank you.
Insightful, exciting. I've enjoyed your backdrop.
Yes. Backyard, shall we say?
I would have gone down into the studio, but it's the lowest point of the house, and reception, I knew we would have been losing one another. So
next
sun shining, and
we'll have to interview you in the landscape at some point.
Yes. Oh, that'd be good. Yeah, get my black cap and
front on, Jan, front on.
I'll lift the cap every so often.
We'll list all of your little points of connection, how people can look you up and follow you and connect with
workshop.
Workshop, visit your exhibitions, all that sort of stuff will be listed, and look forward to seeing you soon.
That'd be lovely.
Thanks for being on that.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.